Core essentials. This part of the course is going to go over some of the most basic level core exercises that will help us out with our mobility. So we started out with some soft tissue work to loosen up some of the tissue. From there, we went into some breathing to get the body relaxed, getting the core activated in a way as well. And now we're actually going to work on stimulating the core. So one thing that I was taught early on in my career is proximal stability equals distal mobility. Greg Cook and Michael Boyle have a lot of work talking about this. And what that means when we break down the words is proximal, meaning close to, stability, meaning stable, keeping things still, is your core. So the more stable our core is, meaning the proximalness, the closeness to it, the better our distal, away from mobility, free range of motion, can happen. So in other words, the more stable I am through my core, the more I am able to move more freely with my mobility, because I need that level of stability to help sustain the level of mobility that follows afterwards. Dead bugs. To begin our core exercises, one exercise that I absolutely love doing is called dead bugs. With the dead bugs, it allows for you to have a lot of core stability as you're moving in. So what we want to do here is start with the first level, which is going to be raising the legs up. Arms are up as well. What we want to do is we want to move in opposites. So level one can be a heel drop, where you're lowering the thigh, dropping the heel to the floor, raising back up. So it's not bend the knee and drop the heel, it's lower the thigh and drop the heel to raise back up. So in my dead bug position, I'm going to start with the heel drop, where my left arm moves back, right heel drops, bring back in, and repeat to the opposite side. Now what I want to focus on here is pulling my ribs down and pulling my hips up. So ribs down, hips up, pressing your low back into the floor as you reach your opposite arm, opposite leg back. Dead bugs level 2, this is going to be with leg extension. Same movement, same exact setup, but instead of dropping the thigh downward, you're extending the leg. So in this position here, I don't want my foot to touch the floor, because when that happens, my pelvis here will rotate forward and go into an anterior tilt, meaning it's going forward, and my hip goes into extension. I want to prevent that. So I want to posteriorly tilt so that my hips can stay level, and so as I extend, I hover my foot off the floor, bring it back in, and repeat to the opposite side. So what we're doing here is we're lengthening the lever each time, the lever being the leg. So I can drop the heel down, and then as I extend that leg, I do make that a lot harder for the movement itself. Level 3, dead bug with a leg drop. So you're going to reach your legs upward from here. Now my lever went from here to up here. So now as I drop, it definitely makes this exercise a lot harder, because there's a lot more room for my leg to travel. But remember, your ribs stay tucked, your hips get pulled up, everything's the same. We're just moving the distance of the leg. Bird dogs. Our next series is going to be bird dogs for the core. Now with bird dogs, the important part here is to make sure that your toes are pushing into the floor, and so are your hands. Your feet and hands play such an important part when it comes to your stability. So make sure that your toes are pushing into the floor, your palms are as well. From this position here, I have my hands underneath my shoulders, my hips above my knees, and my heels over my toes. From this position, I press my feet and hand into the floor. I reach my right arm and left leg outward and pull back in. Now, when I'm going through this exercise, I do want to keep my toes pointed towards my knee, so that way my hip can go into extension, so then that way my glute can fire. So as I'm going through this motion, my toes stay towards my knees, my feet are pressing into the floor. And lastly, we want to avoid this overarching position, because I start breaking at the low back and I start raising up too high. I want to keep that leg low to the floor as I'm going through my bird dogs. Bird dog level 2, this is going to be with the tap. So another way to make this more challenging is either going hand to knee or knee to elbow, reach and extend. So with this, we can keep it all on the same side, or if we wanted to, we can alternate from one side to the other. Level 3. With the level 3 miniband bird dog, what we want to do is we want to place a miniband on our feet. I'm using an extra large miniband from Perform Better. You can use whatever miniband you have available. So I'm pressing my feet and hands into the floor, the band's around my foot. I'm going to reach into my bird dog. Now this is adding in a new level of intensity by having resistance against my legs as I'm going through my bird dogs. Glute bridge series. In this series of core exercises, we're going to be focusing on the glutes and the core. So what we want to do for our level 1 is called a bilateral glute bridge, where you're pressing your heel and big toe into the floor. From this position, remember, hips pull up, ribs get tucked down. I press my feet and raise my hips up, focusing on the back side of my glutes and thighs to create tension, lowering my hips down controlled. So again, I'm really focusing on pulling my pelvis up towards my chin and tucking my ribs down to maintain a tight midsection here as I'm going through this. And again, we want to avoid this hyperextension. The higher up you get, it's not going to get better. What you want to do is you want to see hip and knee all in alignment here, and that's as far as you need to go. So remember, you're pressing your feet into the floor, you're pulling your hips up, you're tucking your ribs down, and you raise your hips up by pressing your feet into the floor. Glute bridge level 2 is going to be in a kickstand position. So that kickstand position, I grab one leg and I meet it in line with my big toe over here. What this is doing is it's allowing me to challenge some rotation in this movement. And so my leg here is some support. So think about 30% of weight being distributed on this foot and 70% on the foot that's flat. So again, my heel is in line with my big toe. I press my foot into the floor and raise my hips up, control back down. Now from a different angle, I'll switch my feet, heel in line. So remember, this is flat. I have about 70% of the weight here, 30% on the opposite leg. Glute bridge level 3. This is going to be a single leg glute bridge. And so what I'm going to do is I went from a kickstand position, now I'm raising my leg up. From here, I press into the floor, I raise my hips up, slow and controlled, lowering myself down. From a different position, same thing though. Remember, it's about getting the hip in line with the knee as I raise up and I control back down. And with this motion here, I want to really emphasize the control downward. Side plank series. So with the side plank series, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we get ourselves in the proper position. So in that proper position, I want to make sure that my shoulder is over my elbow. I don't want it to be away from me, so I want to keep it slightly tucked underneath me. My palm can either be face down or in neutral position. For the level 1, we're going to have both knees stacked. From here, I'm going to bridge upward. I'm going to pull myself slightly forward and maintain this tight position. With my top shoulder, I want to pull back to keep this nice narrow torso, really emphasizing my hips raising upward. So I'm holding this position and making sure I'm focusing in on my breathing and pressing my elbow and knee into the floor. Side plank level 2. What we're going to do now is we're going to extend the top leg to start creating a longer lever here. Same thing as before, my elbow's underneath my shoulder, I'm pressing my elbow into the floor, my hips are raised up, my shoulders are pulled back. I'm focusing in on my breathing. Level 3 is going to be a full side plank. With that full side plank, you can either stack your feet on top of each other or stagger out your stance from the top foot, whatever feels best for you. What we're going to do is keep the same position. My elbows underneath my shoulder. I press my feet into the floor. I raise up, and now I'm in my side plank position. Remember, pulling my shoulder back, raising my hips up, driving my elbow into the floor.